everybody, and welcome back to episode 13, lucky number 13 of PWHL 20. The regular season is over. Playoffs are here. They are underway. We are a game down as of the time of this recording. Maya, how are you feeling?
I am good, except that I was gonna say lucky number 13, so now I'm panicking for what I'm gonna say in this period of time. But it's good. Last night was a super exciting game. We'll get to it. I mean, maybe not for Minnesota, but it was fun. So yeah, I'm excited for playoffs.
Yeah, I feel like, according to the broadcast, there's no series ever in women's hockey. So, this is new. No.
This is
What's
very
new is it's a
exciting.
5 game series, which I
Yeah,
think has some weight to it. And I think, before it was um,
I
it's
assume best of
usually, of,
three. Yeah.
it was usually of three, both in the CWHL and the PHF. But, obviously it's not, it's five. So it's just a little different,
A little
but
more.
it's series exist, by the way. So we're gonna quickly go through kind of like the last handful of regulation games because holy moly, they were fun. Like crazy. First game was actually a matchup we have right now in the playoffs, which was Minnesota visiting Toronto. Really cool night in Toronto. It was their Pride night. I feel like every team had a Pride night, and it seemed like every team really killed it and just did such a good job. And Toronto is not homophobic because they won on Pride night. And special shout out to Carly Jackson. They didn't get the start, but they got to dress, they got to be on the bench, and as a huge Carly Jackson fan as a hockey player, hockey goalie, and a person, love to see it.
Absolutely. I was very excited to see that. I think like everyone was excited. Because does
Yeah, the moment
anyone
I saw
not
the
like her?
graphic, I was like, "Hey, that's Siege.
Yeah.
That's so exciting." I feel like it probably could have happened and should have happened sooner. But it's you gotta when you got a hot goalie, like Campbell. It's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely I would have liked to see them like get to actually play, but I'm glad that they got to be on the bench at least. So that's good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it was a big win for Toronto. I mean, they didn't really need it, but it was still good.
This was the game where they clinched first overall though.
Oh, yes, I think so.
Which parallels here. Oh, there's so many storylines. They clinched against Minnesota and then they picked Minnesota.
Mhm. And last night, Jay, one of our coworkers at the Ice Garden, reminded us that Toronto lost their first game of the season 4-0, and then won their first game of the playoffs 4-0. So parallels
Crazy.
all around us.
That was a tough that night. It's been you could say this for a lot of nights with Minnesota, but this game in particular, that 4-1 loss was a tough night.
Mhm.
Special teams were brutal. Just looked like an uninspired team, which not good timing. Speaking of Minnesota not having good timing, their next game was against New York with I think they only needed 1 point, or it was either 1 point or a regulation win. I can't remember, but either of those, New York would clinch
Mhm. The
um,
last place.
the last the last place, the first overall pick. Basically,
Yeah.
Sarah Philly, welcome to New York,
Mhm.
etc., etc. You're gonna look good in teal, because New York won this 5-2 over Minnesota, who again, really tough game. Lackluster. I just feel like they're just a bit of a mess. This was a big game for New York, though.
Mhm.
I believe they were down at one point, came back. I think they scored like 3 or 4 goals in a row or something like that. And this was their final home game. So obviously, great to see the home crowd see a win. And, as much as it's been a brutal season for New York, obviously, some silver lining there. They're going to be getting. One of the best players in the world, pretty much, right? And she'll be a game changer there right away. Next game
Also,
was, in
oh,
my opinion, sorry.
sorry. It was another chance for Minnesota to clinch a playoff spot that they
Oh my
didn't take,
god.
which was the same as the game before.
There was at one point Minnesota could have been the first team to clinch.
Yeah,
It ended up being Toronto, but I was like, I think it was April 18th that Minnesota could have been the first team to clinch, and they didn't.
they were the
Uh,
last team. Yes.
they were the last. Some they tripped and fell in there. Jeez. This next game, did you watch this one? Boston Montreal.
I think so. Oh
This
wait,
might
no,
have
I
been
didn't. But
like
I
my
watched the like.
favorite game I've watched, like in all of hockey in a very long time.
Yeah,
It was
last
so much
minute.
fun. I didn't watch the full thing. I watched honestly the parts that really mattered when Boston went up 3-0 and Boston needed a regulation win. They couldn't they could still they're still in it if they went to like overtime and stuff and whatnot, but to clinch officially they needed a regulation win. They were up 3-0 at one point. Michaela Grant Mentis actually had two in this game. She ended up getting that second goal.
Mm-hmm.
Good to see her get on the board. She's been unreal for Montreal. Ottawa, I don't know what happened there. I've heard a million stories. I don't really care about them though because it's evident that Bucky has found her spot on this team, and she gets power play time. She's out there when they need a goal. It's great to see and huge for her to get on the board. So that made it 3-2, and then the villain. I haven't seen a cheeky smile like this in a long time from a hockey player in the women's game than I did when I saw Marie Poulet after she tied it in Boston. After Boston was up 3-0, when she came out of the bench like handshake line after the goal, that smile, oh, she was she was just so happy to break Boston's heart there for a second.
Honestly, like we haven't really talked about awards. We did like a roundtable on the Ice Garden, but I think that there should have been like some fun awards, like best memeable facial expressions from the
We
season.
should we
And
should we should do our own.
yeah, and she would 100% get that because between like this season and the international season, the reactions
So
from her
good.
have just been so good.
So good. Yeah, so
But
good.
it didn't work out.
No, it didn't. So it was 3-3. And like honestly, like you could not have scripted it better because I feel like Kaylee Fracken's been like integral for women's hockey in Boston for the
Hmm.
last few years. The flukiest game-winning goal though. She just I don't even know what it hit. She just tossed it on net, hit something. I don't even know if it hit a player.
I
I don't
think
know
it hit
what
a
it hit.
person, yeah.
Yeah, if it must have been a Montreal player. I don't
Mhm.
remember, but it goes in, and the home crowd went nuts. Which shout out to that home crowd because that was a sellout last regular season home game for Boston, and great crowd. So Fratty puts them up 4-3. I think it was like less than 2 minutes left. Eventually, hold on to clinch the third playoff spot. This
What's
was game of the year, in my
insane
opinion.
is also just wild because, like, I don't really think that any of us thought that Minnesota was gonna be the last team to clinch. Like, it kind of seemed like it was gonna be Minnesota, like, they would be next and it would come down to Boston and Ottawa, and the fact that it came down to Minnesota and Ottawa is just wild.
Yeah, which heartbreak for Ottawa. Final game of the whole season in Toronto. Uh, Battle of
Yeah.
Ontario. Rough start. Ottawa was down quick, 1-0. They did answer back. Um, and then, Natalie Spooner exists and scores her 20th of the season, which, if you go on her Elite Prospects page, she hasn't done that since she was in college.
But did you know that she's a mom?
She's a mom. She is a mom. She gave birth to a beautiful baby boy named Rory. Yes, she is a mom.
Yeah.
Heartbreak for Ottawa. It was a 5-2 win for Toronto. There was two empty netters, so
Mhm.
like you do the math there. Or it was two or three empty netters. I don't even
Yeah,
remember.
they had the goalie pulled for a long time.
Which I don't blame
Yeah.
Carla McCoy because you got to show your players that no matter what, you want to give them a chance. And the only thing is, they just weren't getting anything going.
No. It was
Yeah,
unfortunate for Mash's goals against,
yeah,
but yeah, you gotta try everything you can to do that. Also because Ottawa had to win in regulation, even if
yep.
it went to overtime, they wouldn't get enough points. So it was really like the last ditch possible effort, and just like many times in the season, they just didn't do it.
Yeah, the way they lost was pretty brutal too. Like Spooner scores on the power play with like 3 minutes left. Like it wasn't a great penalty to take. I think Snodgrass took it. Um, yeah, it
Yeah.
just like it's not even like you know because Ottawa needs a regulation win. Like they um,
Not like they
pull their
tied.
goalie. Yeah, they
Yeah,
pull their goalie and like whatnot for the regulation win. Like no, this was like just
not
a
close.
dumb penalty. Yeah, just heartbreaking.
Mhm.
I really wanted Ottawa in that spot because I feel like to say you won your last game and then go into the playoffs is huge. And
Yeah.
Minnesota didn't have that. So with that win for Toronto and that regulation loss for Ottawa, that meant that Minnesota finally dusted off their clinch graphics for social.
Yeah.
And they finally got to use them because they clinched the fourth and final spot. So we had our four teams, which obviously
Mhm.
Toronto, Montreal, Boston, Minnesota. Kind of cool that two American teams, two Canadian
I
teams.
was thinking that, yeah, it's
A
kinda
little
fun.
biased. I would have liked three Canadian teams, but that's all right. But yeah, very very interesting and like just like cinematic like final week of the regular season. Um, yeah, crazy
Yeah.
stuff. Um, Minnesota, you did it.
Um,
I don't know
we
how, but you did it.
somehow it was, these teams just really didn't want to clinch those playoff spots early. They wanted to make us all wait, give us some
Apparently not.
excitement. Um, we will talk about the playoffs in a minute, but we wanted to do like a quick season recap. And we each came up with a word to describe the season of each team. And then we're gonna give you a little bit of reasoning why. Do you want to start
You can
with
go.
Toronto? Okay, I can start. Okay, so Toronto, my word was comeback. I don't think this is very surprising. We all know that they started off super rough. They had a really rough start to the season. They were down in last place, and everybody was just kind of like, well, that's it. And then they truly put together a run that, like, I don't know that we'll ever see again in women's hockey. We might, but just like a wild run, 11 consecutive wins, everything just like started to click, goaltending, scoring, everything. And I also think that, it's a little bit of a comeback for Spoons because she's always been like good and a solid player, but definitely this was her like comeback year. And yeah, super proud of her and happy for them.
100%. So speaking of Spooner, my word was mom, but with like an S in like brackets, like
Brackets. Hmm.
yes, yes. Um, because this season for the Toronto to me was Natalie Spooner, like just incredible to watch, night in and like it's like she just didn't take a night off, and like for those who watch consistently Toronto PWHL Toronto games, like Spoons is out there power play, occasionally penalty kill. Like she's out there in the final minute if the other team needs a goal. Like she's out there quite a bit. And even if she wasn't scoring a goal a game, which she pretty much did, she was the best player in the world and is 100% my pick for MVP. I don't know how you can
Yeah,
pick anyone else.
absolutely.
And she's a mom.
She's a
So,
mom.
so my word for Toronto is mom.
That's so fun. I love that. Okay, for Montreal, my word was exact, and that's because they just had the season that I was expecting them to have, to be honest. Like a solid team, not too many like win streaks or loss streaks. They just kind of like played well, did what they needed to do. All of their players, like, who had like a slow start to the season, but everyone was just doing their jobs. They had great goaltending, great defense, great forwards. I think they were super solid, and that's what I expected from the beginning of the season.
Absolutely. My word, very similarly, like in the same way, was strong. I just felt every aspect of their lineup was just like a solid foundation throughout the whole season. Like you said, whether it was their forwards, it was a different line almost. It's like a different line almost every night goes.
Mhm.
Whether it's their decor, which it's just so strong, and it got stronger when they traded for Amanda Boulier. Like it just, and then their goaltending, which was the best tandem in the league, hands down. There was a time where you could argue maybe Minnesota's tandem was a little bit better, but no, it doesn't even come close to what Montreal had in Chu and Debian. It was just so strong all across the board.
100% agree. Minnesota. So my word was complex because there were actually I wrote hustle first, and then I was like, except that we haven't seen that for like 6 games, so I needed to change my word, and that's why I made it complex because there were times in the season where this team looked like they were going to be the team that won everything, and then there were times in the season where it looked like none of them remembered that they'd played hockey together before and they didn't know how to make things work. And so I think it was just definitely like an on and off season for them. And I think that if they can win the next game in the series for the playoffs, then they might have a chance. But it didn't look like they really showed up last night. So yeah.
My word for Minnesota was surprising, but both good and bad surprises because I felt like going into the season, like they were one of my like brutal picks that I had. Like I thought it was Toronto, Minnesota in the bottom for several reasons, but like I thought the way they came out this season, I thought Grace Unmunkel's start and even most of her season in general was just like knew she was a dominant player in college and like knew what she was capable of, but like not like that. And then their goalies were so good for like a good chunk of the season and like not that like I was surprised to see those specific players have those performances, but like seeing it all come together and seeing how good they were, they're top of the standings for most of the season, was surprising to me. And then on the flip side of it, to see it all fall apart has been staggering. Like since the international break, have not won a single hockey game.
Mhm.
That's insane. I think it's like 6 games or 5 games or something. Like
Yeah.
that's insane. And I found it surprising that they made the playoffs. I found it surprising, that they like there's so many levels to it, but surprising was mine for both good and bad
Absolutely.
reasons.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, for Ottawa, my word was short. Because to me they just really fell short in a lot of different ways this season. We've talked a lot about their overtime record, the ability to hold on to a game in the last 10 minutes. They just really struggled with getting wins, and then if they did blow the lead or they did go into overtime, they only had one overtime win, and that was right at the end of the season. There were just so many times to me where it felt like if they had just played a full 60 minutes, not to sound like an NHLer, but played a full 60 minutes, we could have seen a very different team and a very different outcome of their season. And so it was disappointing to me because I just felt like, yeah, they just fell short in many ways.
100%. My word for Ottawa was anticlimactic. I thought that they were my pick to win. They were like honestly, and like I think I said in my preview pod with Jeremy, like I didn't think they were going to be top of the league all season. Like I thought they would be fun, I thought they would be exciting, and I thought that they would make the playoffs and then surprise some people. And it was almost that. Like it was, and it felt very anticlimactic to see them, need a regulation win in their final regular season game. And as you've already mentioned, like all those overtime and shootout losses, like, if they win one more of those, they're in, right? Like it's literally one. Like it's not even like they needed like more than that. It was pretty much won. And like they're had arguably like the best fan support consistently in a sense of like, and I know that that comes with having a bigger rink and stuff, and like I know Toronto sold out every game and Montreal was also great crowds, but like just in a sense of the connection you felt through their fans and stuff. So to me, it was very anticlimactic to see it end the way it ended because I felt like that team was going to give more at the end.
I agree. I think their players felt that way too from like
Yeah,
the season ending interviews that
yeah.
I saw. Okay, lastly, we have New York, and
We
I
got two
said
more.
we do? Oh my god, I forgot
Yeah.
about Boston. Typical. uh Boston, I said grit. I'm sure that word has never ever been used to describe a Boston hockey
Great.
team ever. Um, really, like they're just. I mean, I won't pretend that they're one of the teams that I loved watching this year, but they definitely like had that thing that Boston sports just does, which is just like that grit. Like there's no other word for it, but they're in there all the time, getting those points when it counted. And it's not always the most enjoyable to watch or enjoyable to experience against the teams that you do like, but it's definitely a characteristic that I think you need. And they provided that, even despite having maybe less scoring than they thought they might from some of their top players. They still pulled it off, and they're in the playoffs. Other teams aren't.
Absolutely. Well, my word was annoying, which goes hand in hand with the word grit because not that I found them annoying, but they are an annoying team. Like,
Mhm.
it's a big reason why I thought that Toronto picking Minnesota was the right move because all season long, just annoying. Like, so annoying in a sense of how they play the corners, how they chirp, how they like play those mind games, but then also like how they score too. Like I think it's a pretty big storyline, maybe bigger than it's maybe being talked about, but like how Hillary Knight wasn't Hillary Knight. She wasn't able to create as much space as she has, and she's even mentioned it herself. She said like learning to play with different playing styles that I'm used to and like European players and players that have played like in other leagues and stuff like has been hard, and it was very evident. You know, you look at her score, like her stat like line, like not the Hillary stat line you're used to seeing. And like despite that, and even like a player like Jamie Lee Rattray, like, and they had the Lauren Gable injury, like they've had like so many players either like not that they're underperforming, but underperforming in their namesake and who how they usually put up points. Um, Despite all that, they still got it done and they still won games. Like I think about that Hannah Brandt goal in Minnesota and that 2-1 game. I think about that Kaylee Fracken goal last
Mhm.
week against Montreal, just annoying. And I think they're going to be a really tough out in the playoffs because of it. And
Yeah.
Erin Frankel's also annoying because she's the most chaotic goalie, but also the most like she's also so damn good. It's crazy to see, and she's short, so she's a little annoying in that way.
Like
But I
me.
mean that lovingly. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now we made it to the last team. So, New York, and for this one I said mid. Um, I only didn't use the word that you used because of their last, like, 2 games of the season or whatever.
Totally fair. Yeah.
Um, I think I don't think anyone expected this end to or this season for New York the way that it went down. They definitely were the weakest team, and I didn't think we were really going to be able to differentiate between the teams that much. And I don't know that we know who the best team necessarily is, but I think we know who the worst team is, and it's very unfortunate for them. I wish that they'd had better arena and scheduling luck because I definitely think that contributed to them not necessarily having home ice advantage. I mean, they had home ice, but not the advantage, or not having that cohesive fan base that we saw with like Ottawa and Toronto and Montreal. And I just think they have a lot of the components to make a really good team, and it just didn't come together, and it was just kind of mid. Like, their games weren't super exciting. They did pull off a couple of strong games at the end of the season to stop other teams from having successful, easy playoff chances. But yeah, I think just overall mid, and I'm really sorry, Corrine Schroeder, because you deserve better. So yeah.
Yeah, she does. My word was painful. I felt like, starting the season the way they did, opening up, game one of the league on the road in Toronto, which seems to be the main hub for the league because just the way it
Because it's
goes
Toronto.
sometimes. It's Toronto. And not only winning in game one, but winning 4-0 and doing that on the road. And then even like the next couple games after that had strong games, and then it just fell apart. And I don't know if it was actually ever together. Maybe maybe like I'm not in the
Who
locker
knows?
room. I didn't go to games in person against New York. Like I don't know if it was ever together, but like it seemed like looking at their roster, like they had a like you want to talk about annoying, like seeing that roster, I was like, man, this roster is going to be very annoying to play
Hmm.
against both on both ends of the ice, and they got goaltending in all this, and like it just never got put together, which was like, again, you also look at a player like Alex Carpenter who had like honestly like a lights out almost MVP candidate season. Like she, if you look at the numbers of the percentage of points she had across all of New York schools. Like it's insane. Like she
Hmm.
carried, like her back must really hurt right now because she literally carried New York
Yeah.
all 24 games, and I'm sure that was painful for her and also painful for fans of New York, and even as a neutral party here, it was painful to watch. And I hope that a Sarah Fillier is gonna, obviously one player doesn't change it, but maybe off season comes along and things change, personnel might change, who knows. But definitely painful is my one word for them.
Absolutely. And there was a point in time there at the end too where we thought that like they weren't even gonna like clinch the that pick.
Yeah,
Like it
we
was,
weren't even
yeah.
doing that.
Yeah. Not a
Yeah,
great season,
not ideal.
unfortunately.
But again, hopefully next season maybe they're in the same arena and have that under control, and um, actually have some home ice advantage on their side and not play in Connecticut. Nothing wrong in
Or
Connecticut,
or
but
just play in Connecticut all the time and
or
be
just play in
Connecticut.
Connecticut.
Yeah.
Yeah, and make it up and change it from
Yeah.
Connecticut or New York to Connecticut. I don't know. Figure
I
it
don't know. Yeah.
out. All right, so those are all our regular season wrap up words for each team. Now we have playoffs. So last night, game one. So when we record this and when this will come out, so we're recording this just a couple hours before puck drop for game one of Boston Montreal,
Mhm.
which we'll talk about in just a moment here. But last night we had game one, Toronto versus Minnesota. So Toronto clinches the first seed, and they played the final game. I think it ended around like 9:30 ish, and they had till 7:30 p.m. the next day to announce who they wanted to play. And many people out there think that that's not a lot of time, which in a way you're right.
Except that
Um,
one guy who thought it was like so
oh,
much
that
time.
loser! I don't even. What are we doing? Relax. He's a Montreal-based writer, I think. I'm not sure. I don't really care. Just a loser. Um, However long you think it needed to be, I feel like not everyone was going to be happy with the way that went. They're trying something new. It's a new league. This is, if this is the growing pain, that's the growing pain. I'd
Yeah.
rather that than players aren't getting post game meals. Um, like
Rather a dog
I'd
mobile.
rather that than other issues we've had in
Yeah.
several other leagues. Some people took this personally. I got this quote here from Taylor Height. This made me laugh. I'm so sorry. This made me laugh. So this came from Kyle Cushman. Does great work for the Score, based out of Toronto. He says, most from Minnesota have downplayed the motivation that comes with Toronto picking to play them, saying that the playoffs in general are enough. For Heisey, she says, it's personal. In quote here. It's a shot at our character and the way that we played. But she adds that Toronto's decision was expected. That is hilarious to me. I think that's so funny.
That's
Our
really
character.
interesting
Our
because
character.
honestly, it's because you haven't won a game since the international break. It's not to
And
do.
also why would they pick Boston?
Yeah,
Aaron Frankel's playing great. Minnesota's goalies aren't playing great. Like Boston's really annoying. Minnesota, like, they got Lee Steckline, who's like huge. They got like all these like big body like defensemen and stuff, but like why wouldn't they? It's not your character. It's just don't be mad at Rory.
yeah,
He just threw the ball.
exactly.
Yeah, that quote made me
That's so
chuckle
funny.
because and no other player or anything really like seemed to like, which I think is funny. Like, it's a young player. Let her cook. Like, let her create
Yeah.
these like conversations and stuff. But
I was at
another
the press
thing,
conference though that they did like
well, the
between
virtual one.
yeah, after Toronto made their choice, and both Kendall Coyne Schofield and Ken Klee didn't really seem that phased by the choice.
Like,
Dogs were more important to them, but yes, they didn't have any response like that, so that's very interesting.
it's so funny. And then the travel.
Yeah.
So, uh, okay, there are things to this that I don't like, and then there are things to this that I like, and I want people to realize that when I'm laughing and making jokes, I'm not laughing at the fact that their travel was a disaster. I'm laughing at the fact that we have these narratives because I think
Hmm.
it's hilarious. Um, this is from Julia Teixeira from TSN. Lots of emphasis on PWHL Minnesota's travel turnaround today. This also was before Game One that
Hmm.
this tweet came out, by the way. They found out Monday night at 8:30 p.m. that they had to get to the airport for 5 a.m. the next day. It was a major scramble to figure out child/dog care. They didn't get their gear until 11 p.m. last night, so no practice yesterday, which would have been Tuesday night that they got their gear.
Hmm.
Um, no practice yesterday and full team morning skate.
Yeah, like it's
Uh,
not good that their equipment didn't arrive, and it's not good
yeah,
that the
the
travel
team
was
should all
like
travel
that.
together. Simple as that. Because what happened is the players arrived first on
Wednesday,
Tuesday,
Tuesday. Yeah.
and then early in the morning they had to get to the airport in the morning, and then the staff, the coaches, with all the equipment, I'm assuming equipment manager and all that stuff, and maybe other staff, I don't really know, arrived the next day with the equipment, which that's unacceptable. That's
That doesn't make
just,
sense.
what
Yeah.
are we doing? Like, also, like, book, you know what I mean? Like what? That's that part of this is unacceptable. That is wrong. But what gets me is the dog care and the child care, because you knew that you were either going to Montreal or Toronto,
You did
right?
not have home ice advantage. You were never
You
gonna
didn't
have
have
home
home
ice.
ice. You didn't have
No.
home ice. And you were going to somewhere in Canada. So you knew you needed your passport and you knew you needed somewhere to take your dog. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if they're just like, I have a theory that maybe they're stretching it a little bit, and I think it's funny, so please do it. But
Mhm.
like, you knew you were
How
going somewhere.
how is
Why
the
is
like
Lee
top
Stecklin's dad
story
driving?
her dad driving to pick up all the dogs at 5
I
a.m.?
think
That
this
doesn't
also
make
came
sense.
from Kyle Cushman. I could probably dig it up, but pretty much Lee Stecklin's father took all the dogs, which I need numbers. I need to know
Yeah,
how
how
many
many?
dogs. I need to
What
know
size?
what's does he have a truck? A van? What is this? Did he have to rent a U-Haul for all these dogs? Like, what happened? And apparently he had to drive around picking up all these dogs from houses because all of them left to go to the airport to bring them to doggy daycare or wherever. But like, you how did you not know?
Yeah, it's definitely not the story I thought was gonna be what we were
Oh
talking
my
about, but
god, the dog thing kills me. Oh, here it is, here it is, here it is. Kendall, Kendall Coyne Schofield said Lee Steckline's dad had to collect players' dogs at 4:50 in the morning and and drive around before places opened. What?
I also love the idea that there was nowhere he could, like, take like, no backyard to take them to, like, I'm just picturing him driving around Minnesota with, like, 10
Did they
dogs in
give
the
him
car.
gas money? Like,
I don't know. Who
I need
knows?
numbers. I need to know how many dogs. But so that
Anyway,
was the main story ahead of game one, which I again thought it was hilarious. Them not having their gear and all that is not funny. This dog thing, and then also notes about childcare, which I believe, and I could be entirely wrong on this. So like, if I am, I apologize. But like, I think that's would only be Kendall Coyne Schofield. But again, do you not know?
yeah,
Do
I don't
you
know.
not know? I don't know either. So that was the whole thing. It was like more than half of the comments from the Minnesota like avails
Yeah,
of the morning of game one.
and in the press
Um,
conference the day before, that the
yes,
virtual press
yes, that
conference, yeah.
too. I can't get over a car full of dogs. Um,
And
a,
then the
a mess,
game
a mess, but also hilarious. I'll be honest though, I didn't think Minnesota looked bad in that first period.
no,
I thought
I
they
don't
looked
think
good.
so.
I was like, you don't look like a team that, had issues getting their equipment and their dogs. You don't know where they're
Mhm.
gonna end up and whatnot. But Toronto's just too strong.
I think so, and then I think Minnesota got frustrated, that that they couldn't match them, and it kind of just went downhill after the first
Yeah.
period. Like, they outshot Toronto, like, they had a lot of chances, but they had a hot goalie, or they were against a hot goalie, as per usual when you play Toronto, and, yeah, they just could not get anything going,
Yeah, no,
it
it
was too bad.
was brutal, which has been the story for this team for weeks. Like I it's was wild to watch last night. Like again, I thought they looked good in the first period, second like after the first though, it was just yeah.
Yeah.
Natalie Spooner scores the first ever
Mhm.
PWHL playoff goal, which is very fitting.
Yeah.
Um, she's a mom, but she's also really damn good at hockey. And if she's going, if Soupy is even playing
Mhm.
average, this team's gonna be very hard to beat.
Yeah.
And I thought the fourth goal, so it was 3-0, and with like 40 seconds left. Like Toronto's just got all this pressure in
Mhm.
Minnesota's end, and then all of a sudden Blair Turnbull scores her second of the night, and it wasn't an empty netter. Like
No.
you pull your goalie, you're down obviously a handful. Like if that fourth one goes in, like it's whatever. But Hensley was in net. Like
Yeah.
that's a dagger. Like that can not only I wouldn't be shocked if they go with Rooney in game two.
Yeah, and I don't really think that, most of the goals were Hensley's fault.
No,
I don't really think she had a chance on that, but yeah, again, it's just like the finish. Like, you could have gotten out of that game with 3 goals against, and then you leave it with 4-0, and that's really
yeah,
just not the
it's not
confidence that
ideal.
you need going in. Yeah.
No, and obviously they're going to be a stronger team in game 2, but like you can't have your penalty kill look the way it's looked. You can't have your
No.
power play look the way it's looked, especially against a team like Toronto. And Toronto doesn't really take that dumb of penalties either. Like that's a big thing too. Like I feel like penalties happen obviously in this league no matter what, but like Toronto's not the type of team to, sometimes maybe, but like for the most part, they're the last like couple weeks they've been fairly disciplined,
Yeah.
and like when you get your opportunities, you gotta capitalize. You and Toronto's got the best. Like I'm pretty sure they have either the. I think they have the second best or second. They're up there for power play. You can't take penalties, and if you are going to, you need to have a strong penalty kill, which they have not had a strong penalty kill.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued for game two. I think if um, I don't even know if home ice is going to even help them if they go down two.
No,
Like,
I don't think.
yeah, which
I think
sucks because
next game
your
they
XL
gotta.
Energy is that whole lower bowl is probably going to be packed. Like it's going to be intense in there, but like you can't rely on your goalie forever. And
No,
that's what Minnesota was doing for a good chunk of their season. And, Hensley comes down to earth a little bit and
you gotta
you
score
got to help her
too.
out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
so game 2 goes Friday, game 3 is next Monday, and then if necessary, game 4 and 5 are next week, Wednesday and Friday as well.
yeah.
Boston and Montreal, again, I think it's gonna be a really good series. I predicted in our, like, roundtable thingy for it that, Montreal will still win, but I definitely think it could be a hard-fought series if the
I
right
think
people
it's
show
going the
up.
distance. I think it's going to go the distance. I think Montreal is the better team. Personally, I think that. But I think this goes 5. It's going to be
And
a
that will be fun.
battle.
The
It's going to
other
be a battle.
thing is that Montreal has had a difficult time this season winning games when it mattered. So I'm pretty sure they played in almost all of the like record-setting games
They
and they didn't
definitely
win.
they were in a lot of them, yeah.
They didn't win the last game of the season, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see if they can handle the pressure of the playoffs, but they have the best goaltender in the world.
And
So,
the best backup as well.
yes. Yeah.
I can see a player like Aaron Ambrose
Mhm.
being a huge factor in this series. A
Agreed.
player
Yeah.
who's annoying to play against and then can also score. I see on Boston's end if Kaylee Frackin plays the way she played the other night and the way she's been playing lately, like she's gonna be annoying. And the goalies, like I feel like Erin Frankel's been massive down the stretch here. I think she's a big reason why they were able to clinch the way they
Mhm.
clinched. And you know, for Montreal, like you have home ice. Those Montreal fans love
Yeah,
their team, and I think that'll play a huge role here.
I agree.
So
And
game one tonight, which this will probably go up after game one has happened because we are doing video and it's going to take me a little bit longer. Um, and then game two is on Saturday. Saturday night it will be a fun one. Game three is the following Tuesday, next Tuesday. And then if needed, game four is on Thursday of next week. And then game five is the following Sunday if needed. This will be fun. I'm excited for
yeah,
this series.
I'm really
Jillian
excited.
Dempsey's gonna have a game winner. I'm calling it now.
I was thinking about that
Calling it
in the
now. I'm
league
calling
as
it
well.
now.
Yeah,
Calling it
and
now.
hopefully Poulin has a good series, and we'll see if Hillary Knight comes to play.
She might show up.
Yeah,
Knowing
maybe.
her, she will because she does that.
Yeah,
Annoying.
very.
All right. Well, this
Yeah.
was longer. We knew it would be a little bit longer considering everything to discuss and playoffs. Super exciting times in this league and in this sport. Thank you all so much for listening. If you have the means to, or if you've been considering it, please take a look at subscribing to the Ice Garden. We do roundtables, we do exclusive content, we do. Mike's got his new car cast. He's got his new car pod
Mhm.
that is subscriber only. It's about a 10 to 15 minute show where Mike pretty much just chats and it's great. I want Mike to just chat about everything all the time. He's the best.
He also keeps his time limit, and we do not. So
Who
that's
would do
important
such a thing?
too.
Who would do such a thing? It's the league's fault.
Yeah, we need a break.
Gosh, don't have so many things to talk about. Keep your dogs at home. Don't put them in cars. All right. Thank you all
Thanks.
so much. Put the dogs away. Uh, thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed this, let us know. If you didn't, don't let us know. Appreciate you all so much. Take care.